Right, I've got to move fast to get this downloaded before a storm comes in about 24 hours. So here is a quick film. The Airfix Avro Anson then, in an orange logoed box. That's scary. It's not exactly the red stripe, is it? And there we are. Not exactly the most dramatic aircraft in the world, and not exactly the most dramatic model ever made. So it's going to be a real nostalgia blast, this one. And we start the nostalgia trip with a lack of focus. I think that's appropriate. 42p. Series 2. And I've actually lost the first couple of shots of this film because I've painted lots of it. There we go, still got the missing parts thing. So, bit of green, slightly different green to usual. I don't know why, I just felt like it. And underneath all this, a couple of bits of interior. Whoa, making a mess of that. Oh, come on. And at least one painted pilot. So we are, I was going to say halfway there. But yeah, I'll just let that go, I think. Right, here's the thing. First of all, I didn't paint the interior. This is second hand. It's an eBay wonder, and somebody had painted it this beigey green colour. Now I've got buckets of the correct green for British aircraft, and I could do with using some of it, but this looks quite good. And when I put the two sides together, it's not plunged into a strange darkness. You can actually see a bit of the interior, which is good because this has got big windows. Some other things, one of the little guys was half painted and he's in a kind of beigey brown. I might make him a bit RAF blue, but also all the seats were painted in that similar colour. Got a bit of sellotape in me scissors. So I'm taking liberties now. The thing is, probably black or that horrible green. So I've gone for the executive version, and I've given them a very fine, slightly streaky, leathery brown. But the big thing is, how many desks does this need? You've got 3 seats, pilot, probably what's it called, navigator, and I guess radio operator. He's got a desk, and he's got a desk. It's very desk orientated. That's very British, isn't it? Particularly between the wars. And I've got the funniest feeling that the actual, being British, the actual jobs are this guy is listening to the cricket, and this guy is keeping a track and comparing it to previous scores and records. So in my executive version of this model, that's what their roles are going to be, and that's what they're going to be doing with these lovely little desks. So that's the future for this aircraft. Here's our 3 blue little chappies. Strangely, they look a bit metallic through the lens, so to speak, but anyway, they're not. They need a bit of a clean up, sort of tops of their heads and that kind of thing. But seeing them sitting there, it looks like quite a nice aircraft to go for a trip in, doesn't it? I would quite like to go for a flight in an Avro Anson, it seems. Oh, there go the little men, and I've got to bring that piece of roof down. Anyway, lots to do. Right, here we are, looking at the wheels, because there's a problem. The wheels, well, we're not looking at the wheels, we're looking at the undercarriage. So, happy wheel, single piece. Then you have this really interesting long arm that runs out, and then you have a kind of wheel hub on either side. Then you attach was basically the suspension. It's all great. I was going to have this as a wheels down, the wheels down option, given that you can, by the look of it, you can actually get all of the undercarriage to go in and out, which is great fun, except I don't know if this is going to show up particularly well. Focus. Somebody who owned this before. Focus, there we go. Somebody who owned this before cut those wheel hubs off. It should be on the end of the arm. You will focus. So there's nothing to suspend it on. What I've actually done is pushed in the centre, pushed into the centre of the tyre the, I don't know what they're actually called, the bits that go in the back of the engine to hold the propeller on and allow it to spin. So as I'm not bothered about spinning propellers, what I've done is I've forced them into the tyre, and still it doesn't look right, does it? So we're basically going to, shaky cam because I zoomed in, you see, that's the problem. We're basically going to have to glue this as a wheels up version and make sure that the wheel goes in fairly deep. I think I could have explained that better, but anyway, so that's that problem. Meanwhile, our happy little aeroplane is coming along. I've damaged the paint a bit, but what I have done is I've got the tail on and a really nice, sturdy, really well designed fitting it is too. It has created a sturdy tail that sits almost, I would say, perfectly horizontal, which is marvellous. That is always a bit of a well, not always, but very often it's a bit of a struggle. So there we are with a positive. Now it's a real shame, oops, scraping, it's a real shame about the wheel situation, or the undercarriage situation, because hopefully you can see that that rather large arm that held the wheel in place is intended, when retracted, to sit flush into the cowling. That's a nice bit of design. I like that. So it would have been nice to have it at least looking decent. But now we've got a hole where there shouldn't be one. I'll have to fill it and all of that. But was that noticeable? You can see that it just sits in like that. And here we are. That's smart. Probably weighed too much in the long run, but I like that. So it's going to have to get glued in. Never mind. Just a FYI, by the way, there is one that still has a hub on it. It's the only one. So that's what it should look like. Oh well. So I'm fitting the wheel and the undercarriage with the appropriate hub, and it means that everything's too long to fit through the appropriate gap. So we're better off without those hubs. Perhaps that's what that person was doing. There's the hub. There it is without. So I can push, if I take the hub off, you can see I can push the wheel back maybe 1.5 millimeters, 2 millimeters, and it will slot through as we saw in the previous one. So I'm working with a genius. They're not, obviously. There we go. And then suddenly I've painted it. Do you know, through the camera In fact, it must be the light. The brown looks terribly wishy-washy and not as dark as it did in proper daylight. Daylight's just dropping now and I've got lots of lights on. So I'll have another look at that tomorrow morning then. See how that looks. Thought it was looking alright originally. Anyway, there we go. Just a few bits to do. And then it's complete. It's quite a pleasant looking aircraft. Doesn't look very aggressive, but here it is. No, that was not a brilliant way to end that sentence, was it? There it is. Anyway, so far so good. And other blandish. So I did what I often do, and I went to the box. Very often I start with the box, because very often they're really good, and this is a very good one. And so I started painting like this, and then I went to the instructions for further details. And first thing to notice is you don't get the other side of the aircraft. Second thing to notice is, where are we? Dark green is the diagonal lines, and dark earth is the blank. And this is the opposite way round to the way the box suggests. So I'd started with one version and ended up, or moved on to the negative inverse version. So that took a bit of working out. So this is the box top version, and I'm sticking with it because I've got that far, basically. So that was interesting. It's not the first time I've noticed that. I noticed that as a kid, and then I'd forgotten all about it, and there we are, it's made a return. Perhaps it was when I made this as a kid, because I certainly did. Who knows? Strange goings on. Here we are at last. I think the brown and the green are pretty much done. I've given them an extra coat and just very slightly different shade. Not the usual three that I get up to. I want this to look a little bit smarter. And I've got the rear turret on, but I'm not going to paint the framework because it's invisible. Wait, you hold it up to the light and you can just about see the lines. And the other thing is, even on the box it's shown as very fine. So at this range I'm assuming it will hardly be visible. So that's where we're up to. Just got to put some more of the glass in and the propellers and the last little spiky bits, and I think we're there. And then the markings, and then tidy it up, all that. Markings on, bit of a patchy edge to that wing, sort that out in a minute. I've just been looking at, looking this aircraft up in one of my magic little old books, and it kind of answers a couple of things I was talking about earlier. First is, it was actually a passenger aircraft, so that's why it looks rather nice for a flight. It was the first in the RAF to have retractable undercarriage, which was operated by hand with a cranking handle and 144 turns. So there you go. That's why it's got some interesting wheel gear, and it's a sort of all-round kind of workhorse type aircraft, which is, I quite like that kind of thing. Ones that's been designed as a general wonder in many respects. Anyway, also for its day, it's a really rather stylish aircraft. It was part of it was in sort of competition for being purchased, so to speak, or commissioned by the RAF from 1933. That's when they began work on it. So concept-wise, it's 1933, which really isn't bad. Its first flight's in 35, and the RAF took it up in 36. So pretty good going. I mean, you know, look at it. There's still biplanes at the beginning of the First World War in the RAF, so this isn't bad. And by the time it ended production in 1952, 11,020 Ansons had been completed, which, after the Vickers Wellington, made it the most numerous multi-engined aircraft of the Second World War in the RAF terms, I believe, if not in general. But anyway, that's not bad. That says it's a good workhorse once again. So I'm more impressed by this aircraft now than I was when I started. And finally, I was recently watching a 1941 film called Target for Tonight, which was a bit of a kind of morale booster. It's all about a body of Wellington bombers who gets set on a mission, and it uses all actual RAF crew, locations, aircraft and so on. And the very first shot is not of a Wellington at all, but it's of an Avro Anson flying overhead and dropping a little parachute with stuff at the end of it. I think it's I think they're dropping a kind of mission information to a small aerodrome neatly tucked away in the British countryside. So there's an Anson right at the beginning. Nice one. I lie. It dropped photographs from a reconnaissance mission. I just remembered that the moment I turned the camera off. I'm working from memory here, folks, and memory's never been good at the best of times.